The original intention of the film was just for my personal use, but I thought, with it being such a unique thing, that I'd like to offer it to anybody who wants to see it. On the first visit, Jack took us into his another room, separate room, and there were these brown parcels full of artwork piled up, and he said to me, "You draw like I do." We were in the studio for 5 hours, it was fantastic, and he's got this desk, and everything he's ever drawn has come from this desk, and then I would just go with the flow, and that's what this film is about. It's just a unique film of him.
He says, "I beat you." He says, "They say we came in under the dead of heat." He says, "That's not true because I beat you." And the American said, "Well," he says, "if you like to think so," he says, "but I know the real story." He says, I know I clearly won that one." See? Well, Joe is 6'3", and I was a run, see, from the Lower East Side. And being Joe's partner was an advantage to me because Joe was believable, they would talk to Joe, and the Goodman brothers would get to know him. Martin Goodman owned Marvel at that time. He went to his mother and he says, "Look, Jackie got a job drawing." He says, "They're paying him part, they're paying him money for drawing." He says, "Suppose I go with Jackie." He says, and he said, "They'll pay me money." He says, "I'll draw and they'll pay me money." He said, "I'll give the money to you," which we did. We gave it all to our mothers. They called me from Nassau. I lived in Long Island. And they say, "Would you like to come down and draw these guys in training?" I swear, this is not a story. And I said, "Yes, of course, I'd love to come down."
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this very special presentation we have here for you at Neuroculture. I am your host, Ryan, and on this very occasion, I am going to share my thoughts, my feelings about this incredible documentary focusing on the king of comics himself, Jack Kirby. I also want to introduce our special guest for this particular presentation, the man who put this all together. He wrote it, put together the documentary DVD, as well as the book. Please welcome Glenn B. Fleming. Glenn, welcome to the program. How are you?
Hi, Ryan. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much for being with us. We do greatly appreciate it. Now, if you have any questions for Glenn B. Fleming during any portion of this program, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the live chat. Our producer is going to be keeping an eye on it, as we go throughout the course of the show. And if this is your first time tuning in, we really, really appreciate you being here. Make sure you're liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. And don't forget to share this with all 200 of your closest friends. They're going to like the way they look after watching this video. I guarantee it. Glenn B. Fleming, the moment is here. The moment has arrived. I've had a chance to sit down, read the book, watch the documentary DVD that came with the book as I contributed to your Indiegogo campaign. And if you want to get your own copy of this, there is a link in the description of this video to where you can pick it up. So, Glenn, this is it. You ready, buddy?
Yeah.
All right, so this is going to be an honest review, as certain people would say on the interweb. So I'm going to be honest and as transparent as I can.
It's the only way.
It's the only way. That's right. So here's the deal. I read this. I watched the documentary DVD that came with it. And I got to say, for someone I've only been reading comics for 5 years. So I am still relatively new to comic books as a whole and getting to know the writers, the artists, the people who help make these things known as comic books what they are. But I've heard the name Jack Kirby so many times in my 5 years of coming across different comic books, different graphic novels by different writers, different inkers, letterers, artists, creators, all that kind of stuff. After watching this documentary DVD, as well as reading the book, I got to say, I really, really like this. I liked this documentary because for someone who may not be overly familiar with comics, or someone who's just getting started or really wants to know, if you had to pick a Mount Rushmore of artists or a Mount Rushmore of writers when it comes to the comic book medium, where would you put these individuals. And Jack Kirby would certainly be on the Mount Rushmore for sure. He is known as the king of comics for many, many reasons. I may not know all the reasons yet. I may not have read everything he's ever put together yet, or, did the artistry for, I should say. But I really found this to be insightful, educational, and just very, very candid. This documentary, because I feel as if when you were visiting with Jack Kirby, not once but twice, it just felt it was just like two friends or two new friends just having a friendly conversation, just getting to know each other, getting to understand each other. And you see in this documentary, and you see these pictures that are featured within the book, Jack showing you around his home, bits and pieces of his home, his studio, where he put his work together. You see this what am I trying to say here? This artist table, this table of where all these stories just came out of this man's imagination. And it clearly, his imagination was bigger than the state of Texas, California, and Florida combined. And that's just here in the United States. That's not counting the places outside of the United States. I know there are bigger places out there. I may not have visited them yet, but bear with me. I live on the East Coast, people, okay? But the bottom line is this. Insightful, educational, very candid this documentary was, in my opinion. So I enjoyed it. I would very much recommend anyone who is interested in comic books whatsoever to pick up a copy at the link that is featured within the description of this video. You get to learn about his past. You get to learn about his services in the armed forces and what he had to do. Heck, and granted, this is going to deal with certain elements of spoiler territory. So if you've not had the chance to read or watch this, you may want to, what do they say? Plug your ears, earplugs. I will say this, Glenn. When Jack Kirby described during his service in the armed forces, his legs were so cold that they were frozen, and they contemplating amputating both his legs, correct?
Yep. His legs were purple. It turned purple.
Oh, that's.
I didn't ask him how he persuaded the doctor not to take them off. I wish I had. But the thing that comes to mind when I think about that part of what happened to him is how many other guys had their legs taken off as he would have done, but would have been okay as he was. That's the shame of that little story. I mean, he was very lucky,
Yeah.
I mean, those guys who went home with no legs, and like I say, would have been okay had they just left them there to literally thaw out. He was at the Battle of the Bulge and Bastogne and all that kind of stuff in the winter '44. Played a big part in that, as did all those guys there. Germans as well, both sides were there.
Absolutely. When I read that part, I thought, oh my gosh. I mean, everyone's going to go through some form of, trauma or very serious experiences, whether you're in, when you're serving in the armed forces. But my goodness, his legs got so bad that they were considering amputating not just one, but both. Yeah. And I'm thinking, what kind? That would have changed in a lot of ways. That would have changed his life drastically. Would he have continued to do his artwork and his artistry? Maybe. I don't know. That's not up to me.
I think he would have done.
You think so?
That, yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that. I think he would have settled back into it. But obviously, thankfully, we'll never know that about that.
No. Well, yeah, that's true too. But yes, so that was one of the things that caught my attention. Was when he was sharing about his service in the armed forces, and then some of the jokes he was cracking about how certain things were put together, and then there was a man in a suit as the Thing from the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And he was, anyone who wears that kind of outfit, you're going to be sweating bullets no matter what, right?
Yeah. Well, like I said in the film, is that what he looked like when he took the suit off,
It really is something else. It really, really is. So, overall, I really enjoyed this documentary that was put together by you. You had 2 visits with him. Granted, the first time you weren't able to get any footage of that, but the second time you were. And I'm glad that you did, because it's one thing to get pictures with the man, but to meet, and this is another thing that amazed me about this documentary. You took a chance. You put your card on the table. You made a phone call that you weren't sure how that phone call was going to turn out respectively. You found out it was his wife that answered the phone. You got a chance to see him not once, but twice.
Yep.
And you just had a real, just respectful, honest, and just friendly conversation, and you just let him go. You didn't have any notes, no interview questions prepared. You just said, you know what, I'm going to go. I'm going to have a conversation with them, see how it turns out. And if I can do it the second time around, I'm going to have a camcorder with me if possible. And in this case, you did. And thank goodness, because it's one thing to get pictures with the man, but to hear his voice and actually see him presenting these things about his life is just another, right?
I did have a camcorder at the first visit, and there's a little couple of seconds. But that's okay. But it broke down. It didn't work. I only got a couple of minutes. But on the second one, it was a cranky one, as you can hear on the soundtrack. But I think that adds to it. But the main thing is that a sadness really is that when I went the second time with the view to record, I only took one film cassette with me, and I should have taken more. But the way I am, you see, I didn't want to impede on his generosity, because I think if I would have just said, can we just stop while we change the film, he would have done. And part of me wishes I had, and part of me is glad I didn't, because it would have been, I didn't want to invade on his privacy and his home and all that kind of thing. And he was quite happy. I think he'd have just carried on talking, because as you said, I didn't go with questions or set questions, because I knew that he would talk to me and he'd just tell me the stories. So I didn't need to prompt him in any way. He was quite open and very, very, very friendly. He and Roz, his wife, great people. And I was nobody to them. I'm not his friend, I'm not his family. I'm just some English guy who turned up a couple of times, But he was very warm, very generous man, and Roz was wonderful as well.
And we appreciate you sharing that with us. Once again, we're talking with writer and publisher and artist Glenn B. Fleming of the documentary Jack Kirby. A personal journey, words and pictures. Links to where you can find and pick up your copy of that are located within the description below. And also make sure you're sharing this with all 300 of your closest friends. They're going to like the way they look after watching this video or listening to it. I guarantee it. And we're talking about the king of comics here, Jack Kirby. I shared my thoughts. I gave Glenn B. Fleming my honest review, as certain things on the interwebs would like to describe, if you will. And if you have any questions for the man, the myth, the legend here with us today, known as Glenn B. Fleming, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. We're going to be taking them as they come in. Going back to the very beginning real quick here, Glenn, the first thing that you picked up Jack Kirby, if I believe, was Strange Tales 136?
That's right, yeah, September 1965. Yeah, what happened there was my older brother brought that home. He was the one with the money. I was only 10. He was about 12, 13 then. And he came home with that. And we both read British comics. I don't know if you've seen the Beano and the Dandy, but they're sort of, they're just like Beetle Bailey drawings, the kind of childish line work. And I wasn't too keen on them. And then he brought this home and he said, look at this. And it was all, the people look real in it. And then on page 4 of that comic, there was a Marvel house ad that showed you the Fantastic Four and Thor and things like that. And I said to my brother, does the shop have those as well? And he said, yes. I said, well, get them. So he did. And that's how I got him embroiled in the Marvel thing. But the thing is, must be said on that particular comic there, Kirby only did the layouts. John Severin did the artwork. I think Kirby did the cover, but John Severin did the artwork from Jack Kirby's layouts. That's when I first saw his name, because Stanley was amongst the first people to put credits on. And before that, you didn't know who did what. But it was interesting to me to learn about somebody inked it, somebody, a different person lettered it, that kind of thing. So it really was an eye-opener. And of course, with Kirby's storytelling and dynamic, look at that cover, it's just fantastic. All these, it's James Bond on his little jet thing, isn't it? Just great. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, just to give, for those of you may be wondering, we're looking at an image here of Strange Tales 136, features the characters of Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., also got a little promo ad for Doctor Strange, as well as some of the other characters featured within the Marvel Universe. Yeah. This is an intriguing cover. You got the Green Army men with the parachutes on there, running towards the battle.
Well, those are Hydra agents, aren't they?
Oh yeah, more than likely. Granted, I haven't, like I said, I'm still a novice to comic books, so I haven't read or I don't understand every character.
Hydra is S.H.I.E.L.'s biggest enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the hordes of Hydra there coming to get Fury. Should read it. It's good.
Oh, there you go. Or as they whisper to each other's ears in the MCU, "Hail Hydra." No, we don't say that here, though.
But they don't do that in these early comics. That's just
creative liberties.
They say "Hail Hydra," but they don't whisper in each other's ears. And Captain America certainly isn't an agent of Hydra.
No,
even if he says he is.
It could go either way. So, but yes, that is truly amazing. This documentary is incredible for so many different reasons. Now, like I said before, I only started reading some years ago. These are the titles that I have in my collection. I haven't read these yet, but I'm looking forward to diving into learning more about the history and some of the other things that Jack Kirby has done during the course of his very, very long and historic career. I have DC's New Gods trade paperback here in my collection. Look forward to reading that when the time comes. And then more recently, I picked up Jack Kirby's Superpowers, which granted was towards the end of his career. And some people have said it may not be as good as some of the other stories that he helped put together, but at the same time, it's still Jack Kirby, so you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah. The artwork's good, but these stories, I don't particularly like that series, but you can always look at the drawings, you know.
Well, that's true. One of the contributors to this series, known as Superpowers, was someone that I actually had the privilege of interviewing on the show that I do on Saturdays, known as, and I quote, Saturdays at 12 p.m. EST, # always promote your projects. I had the pleasure of interviewing Paul Kupperberg, who worked on some of those stories featured in the Superpowers with Jack Kirby, as well as many other people too. It's not just two people. There were many, many people who brought these miniseries to light. But I'm just saying Paul Kupperberg is one of the names that popped up when I noticed it on the back cover. And I thought, oh, Paul Kupperberg, you had a part in this? I want to read this. Okay, good for you, good sir. Let's read more. Yes.
What did he have to say about it?
Oh, like I said, I haven't read it yet, and I didn't get a chance to ask him about his time on Superpowers during the course of that interview because we didn't get a chance to get around to it, or I didn't. I may not have known that he had a part in that storyline. But sorry, Paul, if you're watching this, I will get to it. I'm gonna read it. It's gonna happen. Don't worry. I will get to it as soon as I can. That's the best I can give you, Paul Kupperberg. # always promote your friends. Make sure you're following Paul Kupperberg on Twitter at Paul Kupperberg. He's got a lot of irons in the fire over there with the team, as well as himself and the team over there at Crazy 8 Press. If you visit crazy8press.com, you'll find out more as we go throughout the course of life. So with that being said, I gave you your moment here, Glenn. I gave you my honest opinion, my honest feelings about the documentary book, as well as the DVD. I got a lot out of it. Very educational stuff. Anything you wish to add to these proceedings? Yeah,
as you will know, on the DVD,
yes,
the film was released in 2017 to mark Jack's 100th anniversary. This is the final cut. This has got additions to the original film, but as you saw on the DVD, there was a Q&A after the premiere, which was shown to 40 invited guests at a local theatre. We had a Q&A after that, and nobody's seen that. That's not on the first release. So that is included at the end of this. And when it's just me on the panel with a couple of other guys just talking about Jack Kirby, taking questions from the audience and stuff like that. But this is called the final cut because there's bits added that weren't on the original release. So this is the definitive cut, the final cut. So, and then the book is obviously hardback. It's 120 odd pages. It's got lots of photographs in, as you've seen. I've even included some of my art that I took to show Jack, and he gave me a crit on it, as did Roz, which was more daunting than Jack looking at the work. And it's full of. I've even included the notes I took immediately after meeting him. Those are my handwritten notes. I put those in for people, and it's just full of photographs with me talking to Jack, and it's really good. But it's like I say, it's hardback. It's on in demand on Indiegogo, and if you're a Kirby fan, check it out. And if you're not a Kirby fan, you will be when you've read this.
Absolutely, I could not agree any further than that. Do appreciate you being here, Glenn B. Fleming. We really do appreciate you taking the time out to join us and hear, at least I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for myself when I say share my thoughts, my feelings on the documentary, the book, the DVD that came with it. Very happy to contribute to your Indiegogo campaign. I noticed my name was featured on one of the pages in that book.
Yeah, well, you've got to say thank you to people,
I guess I became famous now.
But maybe I did too.
And, yeah. Hey, listen, the spotlight is big enough for everybody. We want to make that perfectly clear.
Of course it is, yeah.
On this program, because as a wise person once said, we are here for a good time, not a long time.
That's right.
I wonder who said that.
Yeah. Who was it now? Oh yeah,
with a G, maybe a D.
Yeah. I think I've seen him before. Yeah. I think it was this guy.
Was it?
Was
that person?
It was him. Yeah.
That individual.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I wonder what that person's name is. Oh, yes. It's Glenn B. Fleming, who is our special guest on this very special presentation, talking about the documentary that he put together with the book, the final cut of the DVD, I should say, focusing on the life and the legacy of Jack Kirby, who, if anyone's going to put him out Rushmore of greatest comic book artists or the greatest, people who have just really made an impact and, made their mark on the comic book industry, Jack Kirby is certainly going to be one of the first names that you mentioned.
I think that if you did a Mount Rushmore of him, I think he's that far ahead that he should be the only person on it. And that doesn't mean that there aren't lots of other greats, because there are, but Kirby was just light years ahead of everybody, I think. That's my personal opinion, and I know it's the opinion of others too. He really was that good. An interesting thing you were saying though at the beginning there about the war stories. When he came back from Europe in 1945 and was what we call demobbed. He left the military. It was 10 years before he started doing war comics and superheroes. He created the romance comics with Joe Simon, and it was in the mid 50s when he started to do. I think it was Battle, and he started doing war stories, because Ross told me that he'd have nightmares about the army and all that kind of thing, and he obviously. Such a traumatic event to anybody who was in it, that he didn't go back to that kind of story for a decade. So, and he was doing science fiction stuff and all that kind of thing. I think that's quite remarkable. So he would be nearly 40 when he went back to doing that kind of stuff, doing those war comics. So it had a great effect on him.
Oh, there you go. Focusing on different genres and telling different stories within those genres. So if someone is watching or listening to this and they say, Jack Kirby, sounds interesting to me, where would be a good place to start? I don't think there's any right or wrong way to go about exploring the career of Jack Kirby, is there?
No, there's too much. If you were doing, say, like Jim Steranko or some who's only got a small amount of work in comics, you probably could give a beginning and an end, but you can drop in with Kirby anyway, because don't forget, he and Joe Simon created Captain America in 1941 before the United States were in the war. And when I picked up that Strange Tales, he'd been drawing comics for 25 years. So, he was 23 when he was 23 and Joe Simon was 26 when they created Cap. So there's from a very, very young age, and so that you could drop in anywhere. Get any of Kirby's comics from the 40s through to the late 70s, early 80s with Captain Victory. Just so much. There's so much to do. He's alleged to have drawn over 40,000 pages of comics. 40,000.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
If you think about it, that is a plethora.
Yes.
Even who's the other? El Guapo and Jefe. They would have a hard time wrapping their heads around a plethora of Jack Kirby's work.
And don't forget, he was also doing strip cartoons as well at the same time. Newspaper strips as well. So what the total count is anybody's guess. But what people should realize that in the mid 60s, early to mid 60s, when he and Stan Lee were revising superheroes and Marvel, he was drawing two or three books a month, doing layouts for others, doing all the covers, and this lasted a couple of years. I don't know when he went to sleep, if he went to sleep, but I think Ross Kirby told me that when she watched him draw, it was like he was tracing it. It was like it was already on the paper, and he just put the pencil over it. He must have had fantastic focus. And I'm sure other guys do, but he was just incredible.
Well, I guess one could say razor sharp focus. And another thing I want to share with you here, sometimes they say that you shouldn't meet your heroes because sometimes those occasions can turn out not to be so good. Sometimes it can turn out to be a positive thing. In my case, I've had the chance to meet some of my favorite childhood heroes, when I was growing up, whether it's my favorite actors portraying these characters on television or favorite characters portraying them in the films or things like that. But in your case, you got a chance to meet the person who really put a stamp on the comic book industry, if not the cream of the crop. Yeah. No wonder they call him the king of comics. You met Jack Kirby. And he had a chance to actually look at some of your work and critique it and share his thoughts and feelings with you. And when he said to you, "You draw like me," I'm looking at this. It looks like something I would potentially draw. That had to be a momentous moment for you.
Oh yeah, well I took him some cartoons that I've done and a science fiction graphic novel that I still haven't finished. Maybe I will do one day. And he said, "You see what I see? You draw like me." And I thought, wow. And I don't think he was just saying it, because when Roz got hold of them, I thought she would rip them apart, but she didn't. And I'm not saying I'm as good as Jack Kirby at drawing anything like that. Nothing like that. But I think what he was saying basically was that on the pages I showed him, the storytelling was like he'd done. And I said to him, "Well, you showed me how to do it, because he didn't know at the time, but he was showing me how to do it." And it was probably it certainly was one of the biggest compliments of my life. Certainly in work. That he would say that, and I don't just think he would say it. And those pages, if you've seen, are reproduced in the book, so you can make a judgment. If anybody wants
there
to
you
do
go.
that,
There you go. I mean, that is a huge compliment. Anytime someone that you grew up idolizing and appreciating their work, and they tell you, "I like what I see here. It looks like something I may do," and that is, you don't hear that very often. When certain individuals meet their heroes, you don't hear it very often. When you do, it means that much more to that person.
Yeah. Well, when you say about you shouldn't meet your heroes and all that kind of thing, well, I think you should. I've met a few people. I've met people who walked on the moon, things like that. I think you should meet them, and if it changes your view, well, then you've got your view has been corrected, hasn't it? You shouldn't walk around thinking this person's wonderful, and then when you meet them, they're not so wonderful. And be upset about it, because people are people. So, but I would rather meet my heroes than not. Some people don't agree, but that's fine. I would rather see them and meet them, which I've tended to do as much as I can.
Well, there you have it. And this moment certainly was incredible. And you took a chance, put your cards on the table. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You took your shot, and boy, did it land big time. Well, we want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Glenn B. Fleming for joining us on the special presentation, where we are having some thoughts, having some opinions, and I'm giving my I know I should probably say this because it's already on the interwebs, honest review. That's not really a thing. So I'm just sharing my thoughts, my feelings about this book, as well as the DVD. It's a documentary focusing on the life and the legacy of Jack Kirby. If you'd like to purchase a copy written by the incredible Glenn B. Fleming, the link to where you can find that is located within the description of this video. Thank you so much, Glenn B. Fleming, for taking part in this review of the documentary focusing on the legacy of Jack Kirby. Where can the person watching or listening to this find you online and everything that you have coming up? Because I've been told you got a lot of irons in the fire right now.
Yeah, I'm working on my second book of a cartoon character called Hatch, which will be coming out shortly. It's been ready since Christmas, but all with this COVID, and I got COVID and all this kind of thing and all these things, and then working on this documentary. But that'll be coming out soon. That's a cartoon character, which I showed to Jack. That's how old the character is. But people can find me on Facebook. They can find me on, I don't go Twitter too much, but I'm on there, or Instagram. Best thing is probably, if you want to say anything to me, is to message me. I also publish Comics Unlimited, and issue 9 is coming out in next week or later this week. And you can get that on Amazon. You can find all my books on Amazon. I've written and published 10 books on different subjects. You can find them all on Amazon. Just put my name in and it'll all come up, plus other magazines that I've worked on. But I'll give you an exclusive here. I'll show you a double page spread from my Hatch comic coming up soon. There it is.
Wow.
That's where he lives.
Oh.
And you can see him
where he lives.
There. Can you see him?
Yep, I see it now. Yes,
he's sitting on the edge. That's where he lives. So exclusive for you there.
Wow,
But,
that looks incredible, by the way.
Thank you. That's coming out soon. And I also co-host a podcast, Comics Unlimited podcast, with Ted Davis at Ted Davis Artistry, and that's on Thursdays at 10 a.m. EST and 3 p.m. GMT.
That is great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Glenn B. Fleming. And thank you for being with us. We do greatly appreciate it. Once again, my name is Ryan. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. Make sure you check out my show known as And I Quote. It's on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I interview content creators of all shapes and sizes that join us from any and all corners of the nerd universe. We have friendly conversations. We promote their projects. It's a great time. I really think you're going to enjoy it. So once again, thank you for joining us for this very special presentation we had here for you, reviewing the Glenn B. Fleming book and DVD focusing on the legacy of the king of comics himself, Jack Kirby. If you want your copy, the link is in the description of this video. So don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. In the meantime, stay healthy, stay strong, stay safe, and life is better when reading. Take a look.
The original intention of the film was just for my personal use, but I thought, with it being such a unique thing, that I'd like to offer it to anybody who wants to see it. On the first visit, Jack took us into his another room, a separate room, and there were these brown parcels full of artwork piled up, and he said to me, "You draw like I do." We were in the studio for 5 hours, you know. It was fantastic, and there's this. He's got this desk, and everything he's ever drawn has come from this desk. And then I would just go with the flow, and that's what this film is about. It's just a unique film of him.
He says, "I beat you." He says, "They say we came in under the dead heat." He says, "That's not true because I beat you." And the American said, "Well," he says, "if you like to think so," he says, "but I know the real story." He says, I know I clearly won that one." Well, Joe is 6'3", and I was a run, say, from the Lower East Side. And being Joe's partner was an advantage to me because Joe was believable, you know. They would talk to Joe, and the Goodman brothers would get to know him. Martin Goodman owned Marvel at that time. He went to his mother and he says, "Look, Jackie got a job drawing." He says, "They're paying him for it. They're paying him money for drawing." He says, "Suppose I go with Jackie." He says, and he says, "They'll pay me money." He says, "I'll draw and they'll pay me money." He said, "I'll give the money to you," which we did. We gave it all to our mothers. They called me from Nassau. You know, I lived in Long Island. And they say, "Would you like to come down and draw these guys in training?" I swear, this is not a story. And I said, "Yes, of course, I'd love to come down."